Hey, everybody, welcome to AWS On Air, where we talk tech and cloud developer tools. My name's Chad Lacey. I'm the global sales strategist, and I'm joined with my co host, AM.
Hey, I'm AM Grabelli. I'm a solution architect here at AWS and host of AWS On Air as well, with my good friend Chad. We're joined with Lumego today, and Arez. Arez, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Hi, Chad. My name is Erez Berkner. I am CEO and co-founder of Lumigo, and great to be here. Lumigo is a cloud native observability platform, and I'm sure we're gonna dive into that a bit later.
Yes, and we can't forget our wonderful sign language interpreter, Genesis, as well. Thank you for joining us, Genesis.
That's right. We're happy that she always joins us in these
Yes.
broadcasts. So, Eras, AM and I have been talking before. We're pretty familiar with Lamigo, but for those who aren't, tell us a little bit about what you all do, what problem you're solving for folks who are developing applications in the cloud.
Yeah, I would love to. So, Lumigo is all about monitoring, troubleshooting, and debugging of a modern cloud application. And the concept, the basic of application in the cloud today, that they are very different than how we used to develop 10, 15 years ago, much because of the modern cloud and AWS and all those services that pop up every week now, I think, every week or 2 weeks. And debugging in an environment with dozens, sometimes hundreds of different managed services is really different than debugging my monolith on my old, Unix Solaris server. You can guess how old I am. So, but the point is that all those distributed services out there that are no longer yours with S3 and DynamoDB and all the others are making it much more complex to understand what's going on, how are things connected, and Lumigo is bringing the visibility, the ability to debug back to those environments.
Great. Yeah. So I mean, I think you're pretty well known within the serverless world, but you guys are venturing out just outside of just Lambda. You're really starting to get your fingers into a lot of the different areas of compute. Correct?
Absolutely. So I think, very roughly so far we covered everything that was serverless. And just to be clear, when I say serverless, yeah, it's Lambda and function as a service, but it's everything as a service. At least this is my humble definition. So if you don't build the server, if you don't own it, if AWS owns the server, for me that's serverless. That's S3, SNS, Step Function, DynamoDB, Kinesis, API Gateway, like all the main AWS services I think today. And that's what we covered, and that was our expertise up until a couple of days ago. And now with an announcement that actually went out, I think 2 days ago, if I'm not mistaken, uh, we're expanding this. We're expanding to support also non-classical serverless workloads, like you mentioned, like different containers, Fargate, ECS. We're going to do soon Kubernetes. And the reason is that more and more of our users are have like a mixed environment, and they have all the great different managed services, but they have also few containers over here and few containers over there, and some VMs, and God forbid some on-premise somewhere. So altogether, we're trying to provide to make sure we're covering the application, the end-to-end application. Doesn't really matter what technology you're using. You choose the technology, we'll be there to cover it.
That's great. I mean, yeah, when you're building, architectures, you don't necessarily always favor one path of development only, right? Like you build for what's right for the workload. And as you're building out, especially let's say the microservice type world, right? Like microservice is such a hot button issue right now. Uh, it gets harder and harder to tell what's going on in those microservices, right? Like you were saying, monitoring a monolith is way different than like, hey, I've got like 16 different services that compose just one aspect of my application. Um, so you hear the word observability tossed around a lot. What is observability to Lumego, and why is it important for builders to focus on observability?
But that's actually a great question, and I actually have.
He doesn't
It
get too
is.
many of those.
No, I'm very proud.
Do you mind if I show you a slide about that? I actually think that would be better
Yeah.
words.
Yeah, let's do that.
Well, let me just share with you this slide that I think really captures what you talked about. The fact that in the past we had a monolith server. When something went wrong, it was, you took the stack trace, you started looking at what happened, you looked at the logs, it was all very organized in one place, and it worked. But in the last 10 years, we've seen the change in the movement to microservices and specifically to many, many managed services. And this is where things become much harder. When something wrong with one service, that this is a S3, for example, something failed in writing to S3. In order for me to understand what really happened, I need to actually understand the overall status of my application, to understand the connection. Like, how did we get here? Who called this S3? Who tried to do what? Who called him? Go upstream and understand what's going on in this specific request. And that ability to debug almost vanished when moving to microservices. And that's the importance of, that's a big, I want to say the big problem today of the modern cloud that people are facing.
Yeah, definitely. It is tough to figure out just that one tiny piece that's failing, right? Like the service that is returning a 500 or something, right? Like, how do I know why it's returning that, where it's being called, like you said? And I've heard, again, especially with Lumego, uh, the term distributed tracing.
Yeah.
How does that factor into observability? And maybe what is distributed tracing for anyone who hasn't heard that term?
Yeah. So I think that's exactly the solution to this problem. And this is why distributed tracing is becoming so popular, I want to say, because it's an answer for microservices. It's the way to monitor and debug microservices. In a nutshell, distributed tracing allows you to trace the actual transaction. Let me show you how it looks and what is distributed tracing. So if this is how my cloud looks today, because it's a bunch of services floating out there, with distributed tracing, you have the ability to bring order and understand the exact execution path of a single request across all the different services. So in this case, for example, something failed over here, but immediately, if I have distributed tracing, I can go upstream and understand what is a customer-facing API, so I can assign priority, and then I can drill down to each and every service and understand what's happened, who called who, and through that, analyze and debug. And sometimes the problem is actually, over here. That's just a symptom. So that's why it's so important to have a distributed tracing in such environments.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, that's one of the hallmarks, I'll say, of modern microservice development and using managed services like S3 too. Is each of these things have an API layer typically, right? It might be a REST API, GraphQL. There's all kinds of different things to utilize there with things like S3. It's a REST API. Uh, I'm assuming Lumego does things to trace the actual requests going to those services, right? Like through the API layer when a request is made.
Absolutely. So, yeah, you know what? Let me get back because you're asking the question that the hard question that I need a visualization to show. Um, so, yeah, that's actually the secret sauce of Lumigo. So, the problem. So this is a bit technical, but the main problem when distributed tracing is something that you can implement on your own as a
Right.
developer, right? You just need to take, a request ID or trace ID and just pass it along, write it in the logs, and you have some unique identifier that you're able to trace with.
You make it sound a lot simpler than it really is in practice,
You're
though.
right. You're right. You're right. You're right. Yeah, I'm maybe I make it prettifying it a bit, but yeah, it takes maintenance, but it's doable.
Yes.
Yeah.
The problem, and this is the best practices for just like microservices when you have VMs, for example. The problem starts when you have event-driven architectures like this one, which are becoming so popular nowadays, especially for AWS customer because there's so much variety of services you don't need to develop, you can use, you can consume. So when you have this in the middle, then the problem starts. How do I actually get my unique identifier from this side to this side, and from this side to this side, going across the S3 and the DynamoDB and the event bridge and step function, etc. And that's and definitely I don't want to pollute my data. I don't want to push into DynamoDB a request ID or something like that. So that's where all, even if you try to implement it yourself, that's where the barriers that you'll hit. And the monitoring and distributed tracing tools today, either homegrown, open source, or commercial, are all hitting those walls. The S3s, the DynamoDBs in the middle that are basically hindering the ability or stopping the ability to get an idea across. And that's, to your question, the secret sauce of Flamingo. We developed the technology together with AWS using AWS Lambda Layer, Lambda extension, and a few more technologies to go across the S3, across all the managed services. So you still have one single view of your request and not just like scattered 5 or 6 different unrelated transactions. And that's the the heart of Lumi.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you're starting to touch on some of the challenges that some customers would have when they're trying to achieve observability across across a distributed workload or managed services. Um, but one of the things that I've been really interested in about what Lamigo's doing is you're really making this more than just a monitoring tool. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. So I think something is changing today. In the past, monitoring was a job of the IT or SREs, ops, and debugging was dev. That was fine. Each were sitting in a different room with a wall in the middle. But this is changing. We know that. DevOps come, and many of the users of AWS that we see today are actually developers who are also doing ops works. Because it's connected. DynamoDB, where is the developing part? Where is the ops part? So all of a sudden there's a single person, call him dev, call it usually dev, doing also ops, but he's still using tools that monitor, and then he gets an alerts, and then he goes to his debugging tools and he start to look if he can find that. That doesn't make sense for today's world. So in the past you had this distinction. Today you're seeing more and more tools that are actually connecting the two. You get an alert, you monitor, and then you click and start a debugging session to understand what happened. And this is a Chad to your question, how Lumigo goes more than just monitoring. And I think that could be a great segue to show a quick demo of Flamingo, because that would be much easier than just me telling about it, if that makes
I
sense.
like it.
Okay, excellent. So let me just quickly share my screen. So this is the first screen, the dashboard of Flamingo. It's a SaaS platform. You connect and you start working, and this is what you get. And Chad, like you alluded to, I think Lumigo has two parts. One is the monitoring piece, and one is a distributed tracing debugging. Monitoring piece is very much focused on the modern environment. You won't see focus on things that you usually saw in with VMs or on premise, like my IO, my CPU. You can do that, but more interesting to put in the dashboard are failed functions. Latencies are very, very big, are a big problem in
Oh yeah.
microservices. What's hicking up across all those dozens of services? I have a hiccup. I need to find that one. So it's very easy. Automatically build a map of your latencies in all of your environment. Cold starts, function, runaway costs, durations, timeouts. All of these are example. DynamoDB reads, writes. All of these are example of things that we monitor. We have out of the box dashboards, and we alert. So that's one of the part of being like very much focused on the modern environment. We build this for our customer, so they don't need to work on defining that. They can define other things for their application. That's a monitoring part. That's an alerting part. But what happens now? Let's actually take an example. Let's look at a specific issue. I'm moving to an issues page where all of my alerts are are ending over here. Of course, go to PagerDuty or Teams or whatever it is that Slack or people using, but also goes over here, and I can see all the different alerts and errors, the type of errors, when it last happened. So that's classical monitoring. And
Mhm.
let's have a deeper dive over this. Post to social failed. If I click on it, this will take me into post to social. It's a Lambda, and I can see all the definition of this Lambda. I can see when it failed. I can see that the failure over time. I can see that we're actually a deployment over here. So that's very important to understand whether a deployment, whether any code changes done, and I can see the code that was actually changed. That's that's part of the part connecting ops and dev, for example.
Yeah. That's root cause analysis. I mean, that's way deeper than just fixing it, for the interim, right? Like that's fixing it for the future too.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
exactly. Understanding if their code triggered that. That's a lot of the time that's the case, and you can see who did it and what changed, and you can roll back. That's it's easy as that. But if that's not the case, then let's drill down. And that's where I mentioned moving from just like you have 20% errors to, hey, here are your failed invocation. Some have cold start, for example. Let's choose one of those, click on it, and then we go to the debugging, to the distributed tracing part. This is what Lumigo is all about. So Lumigo is, I'm going to show me the transaction. Lumigo is building the end-to-end story of the request for you. And what's going on over here? So we got here due to this. The post to social Lambda failed. As I mentioned, you can immediately go upstream and understand what is the customer facing API, who is the customer. You can drill down and understand this is upright, business critical, P1, I need to solve this. And now when you want to understand and actually debug, by the way, you can see that DynamoDB is also failing over here. So
Yeah.
yeah, just having this two in a visual way really makes a difference. Think about how much time it would take you to understand that correlation via logs in
I
Postgres.
mean, you're
Exactly.
telling me you don't love just reading CloudTrail, like just reading direct from CloudTrail. You don't love just sitting
I'm a
there.
CloudWatch person, but
Oh, okay. Even
CloudTrail
CloudWatch.
is also fine. But a couple of words, no one ever said I'm a CloudWatch person. No, sorry. Like here more. We're on AWS Live. Sorry. Yeah, no, I think, yeah, by the way, a lot of our customers are using CloudWatch in parallel to Lumigo because it's a different thing. You can, I think, appreciate that when you see the visualization.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and what I think is really powerful about this, that I think we need to emphasize too, is you were able to deploy this and do this without making any code changes, and without deploying any agents anywhere.
Absolutely. I think that's a uniqueness of Lumingo. It's 4 clicks to connect. We're basically using a cloud formation deployed using an IRML, no services deployed on your cloud. Everything is consumed on our side, and just opening the IRML for us to connect. And we're using Lambda layers, Lambda extension as part of our partnership. We're advanced technology partner with AWS in order to allow you to see all of this. And by the way, the fact that we're not deploying agents over here and over here because nobody can deploy agent on S3, right?
Right.
That fact doesn't stop us from generating a lot of data. So if we click on, on this Lambda, for example, you can actually see what was exception about, the exception variables. You can see the event that triggers the Lambda. So what were the input of this Lambda? Environment variables at the time it ran, logs, etc. And all of this, I like to call it debugging heaven as a, as a developer.
Yeah,
Oh,
debugging Nirvana. You've reached it.
Nirvana,
You're
that's actually a
enlightened.
better one.
I
All
know.
of this is, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we're running short of time. I do want to ask you, about pricing. How do I get started? Like, how do I go sign up for Lumigo? What do I need to do, to actually get access to this as well before we run
Yeah,
out of time?
yeah, of course. So let me just close this. Sorry, let's get back here. Yeah. So this is we started Lumigo. I'm a developer. We started this to try and answer a community need. Lumigo is free for usage up to 150,000 invocations per month. So that's a lot of invocations. So definitely you
Yeah,
can use
that's
it on
generous.
dev environment, staging, some small productions. And then the concept is we grow with you. So as you grow your business, you start paying according to the usage, and that's we have a tiered model, and so it's very easy to start using, and it's free. So we have a lot of free customers that are very happy with seeing the entire view of the application.
I love it.
Well, as a sales guy, I think that's fantastic because you're showing your value to the customer up front. And as they become, I don't want to say dependent, but tied in with what you're showing them, as you're showing them value and helping them with their business, they're naturally not going to want to let go of you, right? They're just going to, as you said, you're going to grow with them. So I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's based on on win-win. It's based on
That's
can
right.
I create a very significant value? If that's the case, that's win-win.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I've learned a lot. I'm going to go sign up for Lumago. Definitely. It looks amazing and very easy to get started. And, if it's free, it's for me. That's how I think. But thank you so much for joining us today, and stick around for more content from AWS On Air.